on my screen as well so I can validate
that we're broadcasting.
Yeah.
So it's just the three of us. Nobody joined. I figured that there was 334 views of the empty webinar. I figured somebody would join us, but
nobody's joined. Okay.
You've got a. Hang on. Let me do some. The thing I found with live stuff is that you've got to announce that stuff kind of ahead of time for people to even do anything with it.
No worries. So let's go ahead and have this formal kickoff. So Adam, thank you very much for asking me to do this for the last 6 months. I've been with the team for, I think, 9, and you've been asking for 6 months to actually figure out a good platform. And this is our first run at it. So hopefully this will be good. And Michael, thank you very much for actually being my first guinea pig talent presenter, whatever.
Thank you.
And we'll figure out how it goes. Now, when I asked you to do this, we were thinking that we would actually do the walkthrough, but instead what we were going to do is break it up into 3 parts, I think is what we're talking about. And what you're going to do is you're actually going to show the final product and how to get started as far as where to find the document and what it looks like when you're done. And then either I or you will walk through the other 2 parts of how to actually build the Power App and the flow and actually do the visualization and reporting. Does that sound about like what we were talking about?
Yep, that sounds good. Yeah, I ran into some technical difficulties today, so I think that doing a walkthrough of the finished pieces, and then like you said, we can come back. I think because there's enough material, we'll probably break it into apps and flows, and then the Power BI desktop and embedding piece of it will be the second. But I'll walk through each of the pieces today, at least at a high level, and then we can just kind of build on that for next time.
That sounds perfect. And then let's go ahead and get you screen shared up.
Okay, sounds good.
Again, one thing I really like about this new platform, Adam, is instead of 4 to 9 seconds of latency, it seems to be, well, real time. As fast as you can actually get it out across the wire.
Yeah, it's not exactly real time. There's a few seconds delay. So good. It's good enough.
Okay, so you guys let me know. Okay, so I've stopped the video on my side and I've screen shared my second screen. So let me know if you guys
can see it.
It looks awesome.
Okay. Okay, well, I'll just get started. So I'm going to talk as though I'm talking to more than the 2 people that I know. But anyway,
I don't know you.
Well, exactly. Well, so Adam, Michael. Yeah. Okay. So Adam, I know obviously Charles is aware of this. I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but I just put out a paper. It's a long paper. It's like 100 pages plus that covers integration with sort of with SharePoint, but it's sort of bringing in all the pieces, right? So you've got a couple Power Apps in there, a couple flows, and then you've got a report that's built out that's available in Power BI, obviously, and then also available embedded in SharePoint, which is a new feature. So the idea here was, we have a lot of exposure now. Customers see these different pieces exposed through SharePoint, and so I wanted to provide this kind of early integration paper. So
yeah, that's cool.
So what I'm showing on the screen at the moment is a blog post. So I put a couple weeks ago now, I put a blog post out on the Power Apps and Flows site. I'm going to do the same thing for the Power BI and SharePoint sites this week. I just kind of staggered it a little bit. Same post in all 4 places. So what you'll see here is really just an excerpt out of the paper itself, and it lays out the scenario. One of the reasons I'm showing this is a friendlier kind of view into this than just going straight to the download center, right? So this kind of gives you the business scenario, which I'll come back and talk about in a minute. Talks about downloading some or all of the pieces, because you have the paper plus I packaged up the apps. I couldn't package up the flows, but I packaged up the apps and the report, and then I provide the Excel file so you can build out the SharePoint list if you want to walk through the whole thing. So let's see. Oh, and the other thing I want to point out here too is, this is, like I just said, this is a long paper. It's like 100 pages plus. I think it's, and you can kind of chunk it up. You can go through different pieces of it. You don't have to go through it all end to end. There's some stuff that's definitely sequential, but you can kind of pick and choose some of the pieces if you want to just dig into one area. But then I also have some links here. If you just want to go get the like, you're new to this whole thing and like, I just want something very basic about how SharePoint interacts with something else like PowerApps, then there's a few links you can take a look at here. So one thing I want to figure out on this, oh no, I figured out right here. Okay, I'm back. Okay, so the first thing we'll do is just take a look at the list themselves. Oh no, let's just go through the scenario actually at a very high level to begin with. Okay, so this is the graphic. Hopefully you guys can see this pretty well. And so what you see in the middle of this is these two SharePoint lists. So this scenario is built around a project management app. So I took it and if you know anything about project management apps, I stripped this way down, right? Like there's only a couple of things that it does, but I think it's enough to show how these different pieces, these different technologies can be put together in a interesting and useful ways. So what you start with is these two lists, and we'll look at them in more detail in a second. You build first an app directly from one of those lists in SharePoint. Then you put together a flow. This is a project. This is called an approval flow. So what happens, you add an item to the list, and then it goes through this approval process, and then other things happen. We'll get into those details also. Then next step is you build out the first app was an app that's just generated automatically from the SharePoint list. The second, the request list. The second app is built from scratch based on the project details list. Then what we do when we're done with the apps and that part of the flow is build out sort of an analysis piece in Power BI Desktop. And then that is published up to the Power BI service and then shared, or rather embedded into SharePoint. We'll look at that also. And then the very last piece is in Power BI, there's the ability to set alerts. And so we have an alert that we set on a particular thing we're looking at related to project management. That alert fires, and then we can do other things with that alert with a flow that is that's designed to work with Power BI alerts. Okay, so that's the 10,000 foot view. So I'm 9 minutes in, so keep going here. Here we go. Charles tells me that he's going to buy me a beer for every 10 minutes under a half an hour. So we'll see how this goes. I think I might owe Charles beer.
Every 10 minutes you're fast a beer, and then what you forgot was the other half.
Yeah.
Every minute that you're long, you owe me a beer.
I know there's something. I should have negotiated this better, because boy, I can talk. Okay, here we go. All right, so I'll just run through these lists here. So we'll take a look at the project request list first. I'm not going to go through each of the fields here. The main thing couple things I want to point out here. Title is a default field in a SharePoint list. I just use that for project name, and I stuck with very simple data types in here. You basically got lots of single lines of text, date, numbers, integers. I did not use some of the more sophisticated fields or data types that are available in SharePoint. I decided to keep it simple, but I would encourage people, I'd encourage you to go take a look at, for example, using person or group for the requester column there, because then you'll get some additional functionality, but this just makes it more portable and more straightforward. The other list that we have connected to this list is project details. So for any project that is approved, we add a line item in the details list, and it starts out with no PM assigned, and so no details that the PM would then come in and supply, right? So the idea here is there's a number of people that are involved. There's a requester, there's a PM, there's somebody that runs the approval process. So this is meant to mirror kind of what you'd see in an organization. So we'll go back to the request list, and we're going to generate two things from this list. The first thing we'll generate is an approval. The first thing we'll generate actually is a Power App. And then the second thing we'll generate is an approval flow. So I've got, you know, in the interest of time and actually making this work, this stuff's already built, right? So I'll show you how some things work, and then I'll just show you the finished product, and that way, you know, we'll kind of move through this stuff a little more quickly. So if we take a look, these have now been in SharePoint Online for a little bit, but you know, they may still be new to some people. We have Flow and PowerApps buttons available straight in the list in SharePoint Online. And then there are some other pieces like I'll show you in a minute about views on the list from when you create a Power App. So let's take a look first at creating a Power App from this list. So it's pretty simple. Create an app. There's not a lot of options here. We're going to call this Webinar Demo 2. Whoops, I'm going to spell it right though, because I have a webinar demo in here already, I believe. I'm going to create that list. So what happens here is, like any other AutoGen Power App, we call these app from data. You know, it's going to be a 3-screen app. It's going to have a browse screen. Then you can pick an item and drill down into the details for the item. So then you have it just displays it, right? And then from there you can go to the 3rd screen, which allows you to edit an existing item or create a new item. And when you do this in Power Apps, it's going to build this out for you in Power Apps Studio for web. That's just the way it works. You can certainly, once it's built out here, you can then certainly choose to go into Power Apps or Studio for Windows and do your work from there. But this is where it's going to show up initially. Okay, so we've got the app built. And we can take a look at each of the screens. As I said, there's the browse screen, we have the details screen, and we have an edit screen. From this point, I mean, even though this was generated sort of in a special way because we started in the SharePoint list, this is a Power App like any other Power App. So whatever sorts of customization you want to do, if you want to add things, take things away, move things around, you can certainly do that just like any other Power App. You know, you'll want to think about how your users are going to sort of work with this, but you have the, you know, basically the full flexibility of any other Power App that would be connecting to a SharePoint list. So for example, if I want to go in here and, you know, I take a look at the layout here, I'm like, well, you know, it didn't choose sort of the field layout that I was really looking for here. So for example, I could say, look, I want to resort a bunch of these fields. I'm not going to do a ton of those right now, but if I wanted, for example, to move the title field up here, I can do that. If I decide I want to do the same thing over here, I can certainly come in here and do that. And so if we're happy with, you know, whatever defaults have been chosen, and then whatever customizations we want to make, just come up here, make sure it's saved. And then, as I said, if you want to then go back and open this in Studio for Windows, you can do that. I'm not going to run this app right now from here, but you can go up here. If you click the button right here, you can run the app, and you know, you can make edits that will be reflected pretty much immediately back to the SharePoint list, add new items, those kind of things. So let me come back in here now.
So Michael, I've got a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So this only works with SharePoint Online, or does it work with on-prem?
Yeah, that's right. SharePoint Online.
Okay.
Okay, so let's see where we are here. I think this is where we started out. Yeah, the project request list. Okay, so when you come back to the project request list, might be a little confusing. It's sort of like, where did my list go? So I'll show you right here. What it does is it creates a view of the list based on the app that you just built and potentially customized. So if you look up here, you'll see you've got all items, and I've already built an app for this. So I have demo 1, I have demo 2. If I click on all items, I'll just go back to the standard list view, right? If I go here and then click on, we'll go to Web Webinar 2. it will allow me to open this. Now, right now, the experience is that you have to go open this separately, right? It's not as integrated into the list as it could be. These are things that are going to, this is the sort of thing that's going to change over time. But right now, this is the experience. So I have a click open here. May take a moment. It might leave me with a blank page like it did last time. So let me see if I can go back and do that one more time and see if I can get it to work. So that's details. Go back here. No, I don't. Let's try this one more time. It might have actually shown up. Yeah, I think it will show up here in just a moment. And so basically what you'll get when this does show up is you'll get the app in, we sort of informally call it the web player. It's basically this is the experience inside PowerApps to actually run the app. So right here, I'm not, a few minutes ago, I was in the studio and I was actually working on the app and I could run it in that context. Here, I can only run it. So this is a way, again, for people to be able to, work with the list inside of an app instead of inside of the list itself. And there's all sorts of things that you could do in the app that you cannot necessarily do in the list. So, so right now, if I do want to go in here, I can take a look at this item here. We'll take a look at the description. It looks like I already updated this one, but I'll update it back to what it was previously. So the marketing team will now use Contoso supplied devices or else. I don't want to sound quite as threatening as that. So I go in here and I can save that. So now if I go back to the list, that list item will be updated. Okay, so that's it. Lots that you can do here with the app, but the basic idea here is pretty straightforward. It's available for you. Go back to the list here. It's available for you in the list as a view, and now you can use that. Whoever has permissions to the list can use that. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is create a flow. So from here, I'm going to do this partially here, and I'm just going to show you the finished flow because I have an issue with my account at the moment that's not allowing me to do this anyway. So if I go here and I go create a flow, what's cool about this is, so Flow has a bunch of templates for particular services. And so we're in SharePoint Online at the moment, so it's smart enough to show me templates that are relevant to me. And so this is the one that I would click here. If I click here at the moment, this will fail, just has issues to do with my account. But basically, this is what we want. We want to send an approval mail when a new item is added to this list. So now if I switch back over here and take a look at, so right now I'm in the same account. I'm logged in as Megan Bowen, my favorite Contoso employee. So I'm logged in here, and this is a flow that I already created going through this same process, right? I was in the list, I clicked create a flow, I picked the template about approval, send approval email, and here we are. And there's a fair bit going on in this flow, but the idea is pretty straightforward. We take a look at, the flow is taking a look at the list. The trigger here is if an item is added to the project request list, and then we send out an approval email, in this case to Alan DeYoung. That's another person that's in the Contoso tenant that I'm using here. And really, what we do is we send out a special type of email to Alan, and it has buttons in there, and it says, Alan, do you approve or not approve this particular project? And I'm not going to show the email in the interest of time, but basically what happens then is whatever Alan clicks, additional things are triggered. If Alan says, yes, I approve this project, then the person that requested the project in the first place will receive an email that will update the list. So the list is updated to a state of approved equals yes, and we could certainly update other things in the list too if we wanted to, but this is the thing we care about here. And then, and this is important, and this is a cool thing you can go do. You don't only have to operate on the list that triggered the flow in the first place. In this case, I'm operating on the second list, which is the details list, which is to say, hey, if the project is approved, then I can then I want to add an item to the details list that pulls in the title and the ID. That's how I sort of associate the project's request with the project details in this case. And then again, I can do other stuff. Oh, and I also set it to unassigned because that's a value I look for in one of the apps, right? The right-hand leg of this is a little simpler. Is because we don't need to update the project details list if the project was not approved. So if we go down the no leg of this, basically, Alan says, no, this was not approved. The requester gets an email saying the project was not approved. And then we update the list with a value of no instead of a value of yes. Okay.
Very cool.
Yeah. Okay. So any questions from folks before I move on, either in the like directly or in the chat window there?
So I've noticed that you haven't really written any code yet.
Right. Exactly. No code.
That's kind of the beauty of it, right?
Yeah, it really is. I mean, and we'll see. I mean, one of the things that I think is cool about apps and Flow, and particularly with Flow, because you can just get a ton of stuff done there without writing any code at all. But I think in both cases, like what's cool with PowerApps is that you can get started with basically zero code or very little code. But then if you want to go in and do more complex things and you don't you like working with formulas, for example, then that it's open and you can sort of come at it at whatever level you are. So
right,
I think that's a great
it's very nice.
Okay, so far we have an app and we have a flow from the list, and I'm going to show you now in the studio. This is, and I won't go into much detail here. I'll just show you a sort of a few highlights here. This is an app that I built from scratch based on the project details list. So you could, there's people will also sometimes just generate an app. Like I could generate an app from the details list and then go and tweak it, sort of to my heart's content. But in this case, it's like, no, I want to build this one from scratch, and I just laid out a very simple template with a header on it here. And I basically just created the first screen and then copied it down into the second screen. On these first two screens, I used, like in this case, I'm just trying to set up a basic menu here, right? There's only two things that you can do in here. You can assign a manager and you can update project details. And so if I go into the first screen after that, which is the assign manager screen, what I'm doing here is I have a gallery control that I'm using. And this, gallery controls are used to display sort of like a scrolling list. Like if we look over here, this is another gallery control that's more complex. And one of the things that's neat here is that, like, I didn't auto-generate this app, but like this gallery control, for example, I just dropped it in and all of these pieces came with it. Like it gave me the button to go to the details. It gave me this button here where I create a new item. So a bunch of this stuff was added as a part of the gallery. This gallery I just built up from scratch. And so what I'm doing here is I just want to show a list of projects that do not have a manager assigned. Like if I go look here, you can see the items that are shown in this gallery are from the project details list, where we have a PM assigned value of unassigned. And this is a quite simple formula to populate this particular gallery, but those formulas can get more complex, right? So like if I go in here and I take a look at this gallery, the items here, there's a lot more stuff going on in terms of, I can sort the list in a particular way. This one is the entire project details list, but I can sort the list in a particular way. I can base what I show here on a search term that's put into the search box. And so So then on the last screen we have, so this is quite similar. This sort of pattern here is quite similar to the first app in the sense that this screen shows me a list, and then this screen allows me to update details. In this particular app, you can't create a project details from here. That's done elsewhere. That's done basically when a project is approved. You know, we had the flow do that, but of course you could do that anywhere. You know, you could do that in a separate app or you know, somewhere else. So okay, so that's it for the app. So we now have the two apps and the flow. And then the next thing I did was built out in Power BI Desktop a way to look at the data here. So we'll go and look briefly at the underlying queries, and then we'll take a look at this in the service also. So in short, what I did here was, so this is using the query functionality, the query editor in Power BI Desktop. There's a few things I did here, nothing too extravagant, but I basically connected to both of the lists and I cleaned the lists up. I dropped a bunch. There's a whole bunch of metadata that came along with the list that I wasn't interested in. So I basically did that. I stripped out a bunch of metadata I didn't need. And then I changed data types, because most of the data types just came in as text, and there were cases where I wanted date or I wanted integer or something else. But that was pretty straightforward. The query editor makes this super easy to pull both of these lists in. Once I had the data in here, I did a little bit of modeling, right? I'm not going to go into this now, but there's some DAX formulas in here I used just to take a look at things like variance. And so, for example, this chart right here has a DAX calculation that sits behind it, so we can calculate variance. Like if you look at the two PMs that I have, my fictional PMs, if you look at them on average, like if you looked at, let me see if I can actually do this. Oh no, I guess it's different in this list. I was thinking of a different one. But anyway, if you looked on average, like across all the projects, you know, it looks like Irvin and I can't remember the other person's name at the moment, but they looked like they were fairly even in terms of their ability to estimate if you looked at it kind of all up. But it's because one of the people was pretty good all the time, and the other person was either way high or way low all the time. And so you can take a look here and see, you can see that based on the different projects, which projects came in either lower or higher than the estimate. And so basically, you know, this is the sort of bottom line here is Power BI provides a really nice complement to these other pieces, right? Like I'm doing stuff with the apps, I'm doing stuff with the flow. Then either if I'm the project manager, or maybe this is somebody that's sort of overseeing all the projects, then can come in, take a look at the data in Power BI and figure out what's going on. So like one of the metrics here was like, hey, what's the project that's been in a pending state the longest? Like I might have a threshold for this. Like I don't ever want to see a project that sits in a pending state for more than 25 days. And so if that happens, then, you know, we can trigger sort of other things, right? So I'm going to go back now.
That's pretty cool. I actually have a question maybe for Adam. So yeah. Adam, he's actually going against the, yeah, go ahead and, oh, I was going to say it brought the focus back to me. I was going to say go back to your screen, but that was me. We're actually taking a look at that SharePoint online list through Power BI. That's a online service. Therefore, we're not setting up the gateway. And the refresh cycle, is it daily? The new direct query refresh settings that we've got don't even affect this. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, because those new refresh, the scheduled cache refresh, is for direct query sources, specifically for the tiles. Because the direct query, we're actually going to go get that live.
Okay. So
for the underlying reports.
In this case, we could pretty easily be seeing different data from the PowerApps, which is going to be real time to SharePoint, versus Power BI, which is going to be a curated view, which is going to then go out and a refresh on our refresh schedule. And I think that's daily for online services.
If it's a cloud source, I want to say daily, but I don't know off the top of my head for sure, because I think we changed some of that.
Yeah.
So,
and I know some of them is 15 minutes and some of them is daily.
Right.
But daily seems like a really safe one to promise people.
Yeah. Right.
up to 24 hours.
Yeah. I know it says that in your documentation that you just wrote.
Yes.
I know it says that. So, Michael, we're about out of time.
Okay.
So I have a question for you. How did this work? You haven't done one of my On24 webinars, so I can tell you that it seems to be better, but you do Skype all the time. How does this work versus Skype?
Oh, I think it was great. I'd love to hear from you guys in terms of, was there lag? Did the audio sound fine? Those kind of things. But in terms of using this, I mean, I didn't really have to think about it. So
I think
I have a complaint about the video. Is it so much better? I had to go out and get a clean shirt and brush my hair.
On 24, you don't have to do that.
No, not at all.
Right. And hey, I know we're out of time, but I'm gonna wrap this up. So you give me one. I think I owe you 3 beers now, but give me one more minute and then we'll be done.
Okay, no worries.
All right, cool. So so now we've got this. We've got this we've published it to the service, the Power BI service, and we've got the dashboard in there. We've got the report, and then. And I mentioned we do have an alert that's tied to this tile right here. So this max days pending tile, if it's over a certain threshold, it'll send out an alert, and we have a flow attached to that alert also, which I'm not going to go into now. And then the last thing is we took this and we got I think it's right here. We got an embed code by going to embed in SharePoint Online right here. We get this embed code. And then you can take that over to SharePoint, and it's quite simple. You basically just, you add a web part. You add specifically a Power BI web part, and then one of the things that you provide is that code, and then you set up a couple parameters like, do I want to show the filter pane or not? In this case, I chose to. And here you are. You have this Power BI report available straight there in the same SharePoint site where you are, updating and using those two lists to track the project in the first place. So I think it's really cool that you can now just have all this stuff in one place, and then you can certainly go back out directly to the Power BI service if you need to do that too.
And a lesson for new players that Adam showed me, need to make sure and set that to be a modern web part on a modern website. So that was in our last video with me and Adam. And internally, we don't have to worry about that. They're already set.
Yeah.
You have to be in ring 0 also to get
there. You go. Okay, guys, I think this was awesome. I think I'm going to go ahead and create the next set with this until I have some reason not to. It seems to have a better experience for everybody. And unless I'm going to connect with John. John was on the call the whole time. Make sure he doesn't have any issues. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and start using this as our preferred platform going forward. Michael, I'm going to make it up to Bellingham. You don't owe me 3 beers. I'll actually owe you at least 6 for all the help that you've done.
Yeah,
Adam, thank you very much for jumping on the last minute.
Yeah. No problem.
Yeah.
We're going to get this shoved into the video gallery as a proof of concept and a starter point.
Awesome.
Nice.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Thank you. Bye.